Good evening, guys and ghouls, and welcome back to Monster Craze Memoirs, a generational podcast about B-movies. I'm your host, Ian Garcia, and returning from his lecture in Sydney is my father, Rocco.
How do you do?
So this week, I ended up watching Village of the Giants. You saw bits and pieces of it, but you didn't really stick around for the major. You didn't really stick around for the movie.
No, it's
You feel like you got the gist of it?
sort of. I couldn't. I'm just surprised how many people went on to be successful actors and producers and directors.
Yeah, there's lots of either like young actors in it or like children of young famous
Or
actors.
people on their way out, like Tommy Kirk was on his way out.
Yeah, Tommy Kirk's in it. He was more of like a teen star of the period,
Right.
but was
Marilyn Jones. I saw
Who
that.
was she? Yeah,
He was also Yeller. He was an old Yeller.
there was Bo Bridges, Lloyd
Bridges?
Bridges' son. There was Ron Howard.
Ron Howard as a kid.
He plays a sort of child prodigy who accidentally invents a goo that once consumed makes something grow to an enormous height. And then of course Tommy Kirk's character he immediately thinks this is going to be his ticket to get rich, but then a gang led by Bo Bridges, a bunch of out-of-towners, steal it and end up consuming it themselves, and then they become giants, and then they take over the whole dang town. It's really not a terribly entertaining movie, and I think its biggest problem is that
It's in color.
It is in color. Well, that's the thing. This is definitely the latest movie that we've watched for this series proper, because I still think we're on our sort of growing and shrinking jag. And this is definitely the latest of those sorts of films that we've covered. It was released in 1965. It's once again by our good friend Bert I. Gordon, who listeners will recognize as being the director of many a B movie and including previous topics, The Amazing Colossal Man, Attack of the Puppet People, and War of the Colossal Beast. Unfortunately, I can't speak too highly of this movie because it's damning just on its face, like the 30-Foot Bride of Candy Rock. It just commits, again, the cardinal sin of a comedy that is
Is it a comedy or a musical?
It's not well, I guess it is a musical because there are, like, rock and roll interludes, but it's, like, in one of those really lazy ways where it's just, like, there'll just be, like, a famous rock musician who appears, like, but they're not, and famous in air quotes, because none of the people who were in it were like huge pop stars. Not, I don't think, and it was a pretty small production, but the like the Beau Brummels, do you remember that name?
Idea.
Yeah. Like, and of course it's like, until they've got this, like, they've got the whole Fab Four thing going on. Like, this is the period where the Beatles are huge. So you've got a bunch of American bands that are just totally aping and copying the Beatles style, and the Beau Brummels, like, they had, I think their biggest hit was probably Just a Little, but they were definitely a one-hit wonder band. And then of course, like, other famous pop stars who appear in it include Freddie Cannon. Freddie Cannon, the famous Freddie Cannon. You remember that name?
No.
Yeah, exactly. He had a song called, he had a hit called Tallahassee Lassie, and also a version of Palisades Park. Yeah?
No.
Yeah, he sings a song in this movie.
I must have missed that one.
Unlike the because the Beau Brummels are just...
When was this made, this movie?
65, yeah. And
Okay.
the Beau Brummels are at least playing at a club scene, so you actually see, they're playing their instruments. They play 2 songs, and I noted this, that Mom actually watched it with me, or at least parts of it, before she had to tap out, because it is an absolutely awful movie, and not even the funny kind, because it is, again, it's a murderously unfunny comedy, but the Beau Brummels, they have two songs in the movie played back to back, and both of them are about a girl who is unfaithful to you. So you got the double layer of a movie that's not funny, a musical that the songs are boring and rip-offs of much better musicians, and just the added layer of just thorough, baseline misogyny. Freddie Cannon's song is like infinitely worse. I don't know. He's got this he like he in his, at least in the Beau Brummels case, they're actually playing like in a club, but Freddie Cannon is just like at a cookout scene, and he just bursts into song, and then you just hear a band playing, and so it creates this weird like contradiction in your head where it's like, wait, is this a musical now? Because the previous musical number was like by a band that's
Right.
playing live, and all the instruments that are being used by the band are being played in the scene, but Freddie Cannon is just singing,
Right.
and
Well, it's
there's
like the
just
sound
like,
of music, you know?
well, it's
The
like
hills
that.
are alive, and all of a sudden there's a symphony. I mean, come on.
Right, but
I mean,
it's like,
it's not
like
right.
it's not too much of a stretch of the imagination. I'm just saying that like it's kind of it's awkward, number one, because the song is just mediocre, but like, and it has that whole quality of like, yeah, this is what kids were like, just gathering around to have cookouts, going to the rock club and doing the twist and the monkey, and
Yeah, if you
getting.
didn't do that, then you blew things up. So it's
Yeah.
either one of those.
And
Or
I guess that's the thing. Like I don't think I have, like, since we didn't really
65.
watch it since we didn't really watch it together, I don't think we have enough material to really cover the movie proper. But I did kind of want to use it as a way to really sort of interview you more deeply about your experiences growing up from the 50s through the 60s. And because if nothing else, Village of the Giants, it's definitely not a good film, but it is definitely a very concise and kind of absurd encapsulation of,
Mhm.
I guess, what we can call the wild youth movie.
It's a parody.
Yeah, exactly. The
Right.
movie about the
It's
up and
it's
yeah, the
extraneous. Right.
young up and coming generation and their wild ways, and so like, which is personified by Fred, the leader of the giant gang, which I can't get over the fact that Beau Bridges looks and sounds exactly like Fred Rogers from Scooby Doo. And so I keep imagining that he's just like, like he does not and I guess it's not part of his role. He seems to be kind of like a reluctant tyrant, but like, yeah, it's sort of represented by, yeah, literally these teenagers growing to massive size and taking over this small town. But it is very dumb and upsetting because all the other kids are just like, as soon as Fred and his friends walk into on the party in the evening, and in their giant form, they're like, "Hey, we're gonna take over, and everything's gonna be cool now. The adults aren't gonna push us around anymore." All of the other kids are just total narcs, and they just immediately go, "Hey, man, what if you're just as bad as they are? What if we don't like what you're putting down?" It's like the lamest sort of thing, and I just but yeah, so it is a very much it's emblematic of the period because there's not all it's very much the sci-fi fantasy version of a very common trope in movies of this time, which is movies made by adults about the younger generation, which really aren't, they don't seem to be socially or culturally authentic in any way. They seem very much to be the products of adults, either either on the one hand, either nakedly pandering to what they think young people of the time would be interested in this case, rock and roll. Let's get our off-brand Elvis and Freddie Cannon. Let's get our off-brand Beatles and the Beau Brummels, and just have them do, let's have like wild like sex appeal and musical numbers and stuff like that, and terrible comedy. And on the other hand, this
It's
more,
just poorly done.
it is poorly done, but
I,
it has themes.
but the point is that, I mean, I take your point, but it can be done. You'd be surprised at the number of recent works of literature are adults writing about teens
Yeah.
in situations.
I
Now, of all the novels I've read, I'd say half of them involve a teen girl in some situation, and then this is an adult writing about a teenager. So it can be done well. Stand By Me.
Yes, yeah, definitely Stand By Me
right?
is a much better sort of young adult, more
And
like tweeny, but like
or
same sort of like or like,
what's the other one with the um, one with where the with Patrick Swayze in it and there
oh, Footloose.
no,
No,
there's more serious one I'm talking
no,
about with
wait, I'm not thinking of Footloose. No, that wasn't Patrick Swayze. That was
wasn't Patrick Swayze the adult brother and they're like you never see the adult
oh, you're
yeah
thinking of The Outsiders.
the
Yeah, that's a good little
outsiders
good yeah,
right
and that's yeah, based that
so
book is good.
you
Yeah.
can you
Yeah, and
well
I was thinking of
maybe
Kevin Bacon in Footloose, but
maybe
yeah,
what
yeah, like
maybe what you're saying is right. Maybe the idea is it depends on how it's adaptive. It's adapted from a book. It's often better, right? Or good.
well, here's the
And
thing. I
is
don't
this adapted from anything? No.
Well, it is adapted from something. It's
That's
adapted
a
from.
very
It's an adaptation. It's a loose adaptation. Bert I. Gordon's loose adaptation of H.G. Wells's 1904 scientific romance novel, The Food of the Gods, which is, to be fair, Food of the Gods is a very prescient novel
yeah.
about a younger generation, which, you know, a bunch of
I had to
dumb,
ask.
a bunch of, yeah, exactly, a bunch of dumps in The Food of the Gods, a bunch of dumb scientists, they invent this substance that makes things grow to exponentially, and while it leads to a lot of problems, like there will be just like giant rodents and bugs and plants pottering around, and modern society needs to learn
Just
how
like
to
today.
yeah, exactly, modern society needs to learn how to deal with them. But then like
Or killer shrews, right?
right, or and then someone comes up with the idea of feeding
Wait a minute.
kids the and so wait,
Go ahead.
the kids who are fed this substance end up growing into like 40-foot
Okay.
tall teenagers.
Right.
So that part is very much premised in the novel, and so the whereas I haven't read the novel yet, and again I think I need to later on revisit the movie, but do an episode proper on the novel, The Food of the Gods, because I do think Wells, at least, his imagination, for someone who's writing in the early 20th century, is very prescient about the notion of what if there is this distinct generation which, because of the sort of superficial prosperity of a time, which in the novel is then represented by this food that literally makes things grow to fantastic, seemingly uncontrollable exponential growth.
Mm-hmm.
What are the unpredicted consequences of the younger generation?
What could go wrong?
Exactly. What could go wrong? The younger generation finds themselves in these circumstances and inevitably bucks up against the older generation and their conservative values. And obviously Village of the Giants doesn't really take in any adult characters whatsoever. It's all teenagers and the police chief and the police chief. But
a lot of them do, right? Stand By Me doesn't.
but there's a motivation in Stand By Me, because Stand By Me, like, actually.
Oh no, I'm not saying. I don't know what you're saying. I'm just saying that you don't see adults. It's almost like what do you call the cartoon characters where the parents aren't around, but
Yeah, exactly.
right.
The Peanuts,
Peanuts,
but it's like,
and so,
but
yeah.
with the Village of the Giants, it's like the only adults there is the police chief, and that's how you know that the hero kids are like true narcs, because they're working with the police. It's just it's just the corniest possible way you could have adapted the story. And it's kind of disappointing in a way, because I think,
It's a shame.
yeah, because we know Bird Eye Gordon can do better. We know he can make a more interesting movie,
course,
but
yes.
he just went for the lowest common denominator here. And I'm thinking in terms of, but at least getting back to, yeah, I'll do a more proper episode really getting into Wells's novel, and then maybe tying in Village of the Giants as an adaptation and sort of critiquing it that way. But what I more want to, I'll bounce back to what you pointed out, that like whereas whether it's Stand By Me or Footloose, what have you, or like what we're seeing with Village of the Giants is just one sort of really absurd example of the types of movies that were made during the time which concern teenage characters.
Mm-hmm.
Because obviously these movies are responding to a proliferation, not a proliferation, but they're responding to the baby boom. They're responding to the fact that for the for a fairly unprecedented moment in American history after the Second World War, at this time of amazing economic prosperity, this seemingly unending expansion in manufacturing and industrialization and easily purchasable commodities, high wages, high property and income taxes, especially on the particularly wealthy. So there's also a robust, social infrastructure, but also the proliferation of personal cars as opposed to public transportation and television sets. So you have the first generation that is really being massively exposed and marketed to through mass media. So you suddenly have the makings of the first coherent youth culture. And I can relate it back to the food of the gods because, before the 20th century, there really wasn't a youth culture, so to speak, or at least there wasn't one that had to be recognized. Like even the idea of young people being kind of a class or a demographic that was distinct from adults and had distinct grievances or requirements that had to be addressed on a specific level and couldn't just be addressed just by broadly appealing to any whatever class they fell into. That was something that more developed, at least in the West, in the 19th century, where you see, of course, the rise of number one, you see the rise of bourgeois society, and in bourgeois society there comes with it this greater emphasis on the cultivation of the young person, the rearing of them to, because in the bourgeois world of the 19th century, there's this great concern about the potential for the decline of civilization, the potential for the degeneration of people, and therefore there is this incredible emphasis placed on the proper and healthy cultivation of young people and the protecting of them from negative or pernicious influences, whether it's sex or drugs or delinquency of some kind. And then countervailing to that, you also have the rise of socialistic and workers' rights movements, where you have this development of this idea that, you can't be sending the kids to work in the coal mines anymore. Like, suddenly this idea of child labor as this oppressive and exploitative and abusive practice comes into the fore. So it's only really in the early 20th century that you see the coherent development that, number one, that young people are a social entity which are distinct from adults. You can't just treat them in the same way that you would an adult. Like, you can't just send someone who's 14 to fight in a war. You have to have age limits on who, specific age requirements on who can fight in the First World War. But it isn't really until the baby boom, because during the Great Depression, a lot of people held off from getting married and from having children because of the economic downturn. And then that was pushed even further by the start of the Second World War. But now, people coming back from that into this moment of increased prosperity, there is this explosion of birth rates, where I think it was even around 1949, the birth rate in the country was as high as one child in America born every 7 seconds. Like, this is how much people were.
That's why they call it a baby boom.
Right, exactly. And so but out of that, as far as...
Well, yeah, Rebel Without a Cause in 55.
Right, that's all the way in 55. It's
yeah, this is later. You're trying to say that...
This is 10 years later, but it's part of the same spectrum.
It is.
From the 50s through the 60s.
You're right, it is.
But
sort of. Because Rebel Without a Cause, they're 17 already, so they were born before the war was over. And then the movie...
Yeah. There's a blurring there. You can include sort of people...
You can, but I think...
Because the baby boom technically starts around 1941. That's when you see birth rates really starting to go up after they had precipitously declined.
But I meant in terms of the independence of the separation of adult from a separate character for the younger people.
Right.
And Rebel Without a Cause is earlier, 10 years earlier, and yet you already have that That's
the
already
development
starting.
of a development
Right.
of a more independent. They have more leisure time. They have more
Or the Beat
disposable
generation,
income,
right?
and again, they can't be employed in factories and and coal mines anymore. So where are the kids doing? They have more
Right.
freedom to just sort of move around. And so what happens in the 50s and 60s is that you see the realization by music publishers and filmmakers and book publishers that you have this primary demographic of
There's a new
who is
commodity.
of
Yep.
who is
Yep.
buying commodities,
Right.
but who cannot be appealed to through the same broad,
Right.
wide net cast mechanisms
Right.
that you were operating under
Right.
in the
Because
30s
they're
and
not getting their
40s.
money from themselves; they're getting it from their parents.
Right,
So you have to
exactly.
appeal to them differently.
You have
Right,
to
sure.
appeal to them differently.
Right.
And so the initial way that this goes about is sort of this sort of imperfect prosaic way, where on the one hand you have sort of like social issue movies, like you mentioned, Rebel Without a Cause, Blackboard Jungle is another one, but then
Yeah,
also
that's true.
but then also you have the more nakedly pandering ones, where so it'll be like rock musicals, just like Village of the Giants, but it'll be like more like Elvis Presley musicals. Whoever's hot among the teens, you put them in a movie.
West Side Story.
West Side Story, that's another one. That's more in like I think 66. West Side Story.
I'm not sure. Is it that early?
Yeah, I think
Probably you're right. You're right. It's early.
Oh, 61. I
Right.
was wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know it's in the '60s. So
Yeah, definitely. So you could definitely think of West Side Story as again a prosaic teen film. Definitely also falls into that camp of the social issue movie, the problem, the perceived problem, however realistic it was or not, of juvenile delinquency, of youth gangs. Like a lot of these social issue movies, or like teen pregnancy is an issue that you
Sure.
see represented also in television dramas. The Gidget isn't really a social issue movie, but it's the
Gidget? Yeah.
It's
When
the-
was that? That's one with
God.
Cliff Robertson, right?
that had to be the
That's
early.
'50s too, right? That was a great movie, by the way, Gidget.
I still haven't
The
seen it.
original?
1959, Gidget. Yeah,
That's a good
and
movie.
that fall. Oh, James Dean is also in that. Sandra Dee, Cliff Robertson, and James. Oh, James Darren, not James Dean. But yeah,
James
so
Darren and Cliff Robertson.
yeah, so you see the development of marquee stars who are often more associated with music. Elvis Presley is one of them. You also have the later in the 60s, you have like the beach party movies that begin with American International Pictures, Frankie Avalon, and Annette, what's her name?
Yeah, Annette Funicello.
Annette
You're right.
Funicello,
Right.
yeah. So
Right,
those,
Beach Blanket Bingo.
and in
Yep.
those cases, there's very much the opposite of the social issue, where it's just naked pandering to Rock Around the Clock is another early example of that. It's just naked pandering to what is perceived to be this is what kids are interested in, but as a matter of
I think it plays to what goes on in their head, doesn't it? In reality, it isn't like that.
yeah.
But it plays to what kids, obviously, entertainment plays to what you actually feel in your id, right?
Or what that you fantasize
Right.
about.
Well,
And part
yeah,
of it is just like you imagine, like most I feel like this is something that's true about all generations of young people since the baby boom, since the development of this coherent youth culture that takes place in the 50s through these unique circumstances, that every generation after that, I think it's very common for teenagers to have this idea that you're doing nothing, but you fantasize, oh, all the other kids are out getting away with murder, going on adventures, going to the beach,
exactly,
going to
right?
parties, but,
So-
but very few people are actually doing
And
that. Yeah.
what started to kill that are three things. First was the assassination of John F. Kennedy in
Yeah,
'63.
the dream is over. Starts to, yeah.
Then you'd have AIDS.
Well, that is, more in the 80s,
That's later.
yeah. But
And
even
then
before that, the Vietnam War comes and
That's
spoils
what
a lot
killed,
of the...
because you would still have that today. You would still have that I think you would still have that coherent
The more fantasist aspect,
fantasy
the more
of
dreamy,
younger
like,
people
where
as
are
a
the
group.
where
now
the kids
now
are.
we're all
Yeah.
separated and isolated. They say it's the
Well, suburbanization also directly contributes to that sense of alienation. Like there's less social cohesion. You see the development, the
Well-
very same generation that ends up benefiting from the robust social democracy of the New Deal and post-war period ends up being the exact generation that votes for the total uh, uh, crippling and hobbling
It
of
is
that
kind of
system.
it is very
Ends up being more
disconcerting.
isolating.
It is
Yeah.
very disconcerting.
But I do want to
But you're
get.
right about that. I think you're right about the fact that I lived in a neighborhood. So
Mm,
in a neighborhood, you couldn't live. Once you're outside your house, you're smacked up against someone else's face, another kid.
yeah.
Here you don't see that. Here on like look at our street. Now when I was younger,
Yeah.
we had people nearby. Kenny Simon behind here. We had Ron Trainer over here. We had people, not the best sorts of people in the world that I got involved with, but nevertheless, you had a
We'll
small.
get deeper into those stories as the episode goes on, but I do want to
I don't
just
know.
I do just want to
But you're
finally
right.
I do want
Something's
to
going on though, right?
yeah.
Because this
Yeah.
is development here. You figure kids would be all together. You'd see them playing and all, but you don't. It's
No.
very bizarre. It is kind of bizarre. Go
I
ahead.
mean,
Yeah.
there's this more atomization now, but I think the point
Atomization's
I
good.
wanted to finish on with
Yeah.
these early prosaic movies about teen characters is I know there is this aspect of it. It was like, well, teens would go to see them because it's fantasist nonsense, even if it's sort of patronizing. It's the product of adults imagining what kids would like. I think there is room for the contrary interpretation, which is that kids were never really seriously into this, or if they were into it, it was largely
That's what fantasy's all
white
about,
male.
isn't it?
Well, it's white male boys. Is that that's the primary demographic for these sorts of things? Like I do remember reading this really good combination of a media critique and memoir written by Susan J. Douglas. It's called Where the Girls Are. And she talks about the beach party movies and a lot of these rock musicals in the context of growing up a young woman during the baby boom. And to her, it's not just a function of the fact that these movies clearly cater more to white male fantasies than to women or to black kids or to people of color. It's specifically that, especially with beach party movies, especially with these exploitation variety films, and Village of the Giants fits smack dab into that genre. It's much more overtly and creepily about the fetishization and the sexualization of young people, which seems to be far more directly geared towards nakedly appealing to the perverse and puerile interests of adults much more than it is about, what the kids themselves, broadly speaking, are actually interested in.
It's
But
kind of funny because you're probably right. I think it's almost as if it's anachronistic in a way that
yeah,
you think that teenagers wouldn't even enjoy this picture.
yeah. I guarantee no teenager enjoyed Village of the Giants. Well, part of that is just because it's a bad movie,
Bad movie, yeah.
but like it's like I can think of. I think it's the fact that these are prosaic movies about teenagers, but the models that Hollywood had at that time in response to the baby boom generation, whether it's a rock musical or whether it's a social issue movie, these weren't a coherent genre yet that we would now call the teen film or the young adult movie or novel. These were just already prevalent genres: the social issue drama, the melodrama, the musical, the comedy farce that teen characters were just basically slotted into and pandered to in the most superficial ways. It really isn't until, ironically, just like we pointed out, as society, as the post baby boom America becomes more increasingly geared towards suburban life, less geared towards social community, even more atomized and alienated, that you see the emergence of a coherent teen movie, particularly through like the films of John Waters, like 16 Candles, or uh St. Elmo's Fire, or The
Pretty in
Breakfast
Pink.
Club. Pretty in Pink, yeah, that's definitely a quintessential example. Yeah, you see in the 70s and 80s the formalization of movies about teenagers as a distinct genre with their own archetypes, and that are much more concerned about basically just the social lives of young
Right,
people, and
right.
basically this. this almost.
Oh, what's that one with the Martians where the teenagers are the ones that kill them with the headlights?
Are you still thinking of Invasion of the Saucer
That's
Men?
Invasion Space. So,
That's a bit before the John Hughes movies.
I know they are.
That's more for that's more of the nakedly pandering part of it. And again, we know that the old, but again, with those movies, with the formalization of the coherent teen movie, what we basically see is kind of an acknowledgement of it only comes about really through just it becomes only consistently viable and marketable as a genre through the sheer alienation and the cynical turn that is taken after all of the events that you just described. First, the assassinations of Martin Luther King and John F. Kennedy and Robert Kennedy, and also the Vietnam War, and just what profound distrust that it produces in the American public in any way, with the federal government, with the there's not a lot of room for idealism, so that ironically creates a space where you can just focus on the social lives of teens, because suddenly the alienation of teenagers becomes a much more frankly understandable. It isn't just it's not just these wild youth movies. It's not just about going to beach parties and shaking your ass and being in bikinis. So I think that's true. But as long as we are talking about this period, I do want to use Village of the Giants and these prosaic teen movies in general as basically just a way to interview you about, your young adult and your teen life during this period, and maybe get some funny stories out of it, or maybe some not so funny stories. So first of all, let's set the scene of what this neighborhood that we're actually still in now. I mean, we're occupying the same space, but it's not the same neighborhood, as you already alluded.
It's like a time machine.
Yeah. Describe the scene, the generic setting that you're in now, and then tell me how it's different. How it was different when you were a kid. What are the differences?
There weren't any apartments. This is farmland.
It was all farmland?
All farmland.
Yeah, so this was really, was it it was a suburb, though? It was like a sort of small suburb? What kind of people were in this suburb? Who were the people buying houses in this area?
Most of the people that were getting out of the city and moving out.
So it's like suburbs. A white flight movement?
Not a white flight necessarily, because Penwood Drive, which is in Ewing Township, is not African American necessarily, or any mix. It was a little more Yeah, okay. I think it's not clear why. Anyway, that's what happened. So it wasn't just me. It was then we came as a group. So then my Uncle Andy came with his kids, and so all the way down the line and then of course it changes. Your school changes, so you go to a different school. Then you meet friends there, and they're nearby. So we're close knit. So St. Anthony's is right here, right? Or McCorston, right? So that's right there. We walked there. It isn't like it was.
How long was the walk? Right
here, the high school.
Oh, the high school there's no high school. Oh, the high school up on.
Right here.
You mean that old that what is now a Catholic school now? That's where you went to public school?
Not public.
Oh, you went to a private Catholic school. Yeah, okay, so that's it.
But there are public schools, as you know.
Right, but and you probably could have, when you did get to high school, did you go to a private Catholic high school, or so you went private your whole life? So it's a little bit.
It doesn't matter. Yeah,
but the point is that primarily
teens. Doesn't matter.
Primarily farmland.
Yeah.
This was more or less like a sort of. It's like a heterodox of rural and early suburban
and blue collar workers.
And blue collar workers.
Less white collar.
But because of the GI Bill, because grandfather was a veteran, wasn't he? Or
yes.
What theater did he fight in? I know this isn't particularly
Germany.
Yep. Yeah, somewhere in the Western Front.
Mm-hmm.
So he comes back from the war. He's already married at this point because grandma and grandpa
No, he
got
gets
married.
married when he comes back.
He got married when he came back. Okay, good.
Right.
Were they in a relationship before that, or was
Yes.
it so like okay? So classic baby boom story. They were
Yes.
in a relationship before. They had plans to get married. They put it off. He went to war. He comes back. I imagine. Did he take advantage of the GI Bill?
Yes.
Was he able to get an education with
Just a little bit because
more like technical training?
yes.
Or, yeah. What did he do?
Welder.
Welder?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, that's just such a classic Italian job.
Welder.
Like like I guess there was still a little bit of a
Well, at that
anti-Italian
time,
and anti-Catholic
because
of
manufacturing was so high, welders were needed.
Yeah, you need a lot of
A
welders.
lot of them. So
Yeah.
it was right at the boom, like you said. It was a boom time, and then
And a lot of expanding social infrastructure, high tax rates, but with those high tax rates, you get great social services. Like, what was the public transportation like? Was there a bus that came through the neighborhood, or did you have to sort of go
no,
a long way?
it's pretty much the way it's always been. Is that you really have to rely on cars,
Yeah, there was the personal automobile.
just like it's always the same. Yeah.
When you were young, do you remember always having an automobile, or was there a specific moment you remember that you guys got an automobile?
Well, I walked to school.
Yeah. Well, you wouldn't necessarily be driven because that was back in the day where like
No one drives you.
exactly. Again, this is sort of I know I already addressed how like this is a very what's happening in the baby boom as far as the development of this coherent youth culture, or at least the prosaic aspects of it. It's still this interstitial moment between the antiquated idea of like what I'm gonna drive this kid to school. That's stupid. He can walk himself. He can take care of himself.
Well, no, but
versus
no teenager or no
like
young
no one would ever have
want to be driven to school, right? You could walk or you had your own
exactly.
car,
Yeah.
right?
But the parents also like it seems to me like, and it seems like this is a common story of like this period is that like it just was much more common back then. It's like people didn't even necessarily think about that. If you can make the walk to school, then you walk to school.
Right.
What, I'm gonna drive you? I gotta go to work.
Right.
It's like, and like at least for my generation, like even if I could have walked to school when I was young, but even if I could, like say there was a public school that was a stone's throw away, there's no chance in hell that like you or mom would have let me walk to school.
I don't know if it's right here. I probably would. But anyway.
But yeah, so we're setting the scene here. You did have an older brother, so you were preceded by Uncle Nick. So he was born in the late 40s, right?
47.
47. And so you're born in 51.
Right.
And so the makeup's still the same. Like, and then do you know when you got your first like bicycle? Because like that would have been a big thing to like get a bike, and that's how you really start to get
learn
around.
how to ride. Yeah, so I was young, so learn how to ride a bike. And that's then you have all the permutations of what kind of bike you want. So
you got to soup it out. Like,
right,
did you soup out your bike?
The Stingray bike. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Yeah, it wasn't really any faster. It just felt like it was faster. Had small
it
wheels,
looked like it was faster. It was very cool
had,
looking.
almost looked like a chopper.
Right, exactly. It's like a hot rod of little kid
Looked
bicycles.
like chopped. So then, but then you grab yourself.
Did you do the thing where you put like baseball cards in the spokes to make that noise?
Sometimes, but then you do pop wheelies with it, and you could go up ramps and get killed, things like that. So, and that's what you did. So, a bicycle,
and that's how you got around.
Bicycle was a major, and you get far with a bike, right?
Oh,
Bike will take you anywhere.
Especially in a rural area,
a
lot of open road, not a lot. I imagine there wasn't as much traffic and
play
thoroughfare.
Football on the street. No.
Oh man. So good. We're getting this picture painted. Like the movie house. Like how long do you think to get to the movie house? Would you?
You have to drive for that.
You'd have to drive. Okay.
Because that's by the CYO in Trenton.
Okay.
All the way down there.
That's a bit far away.
Yeah,
so like that's where you'd have to drive. That was more in the main town. Like you're a bit far from Main Street, but you can with a bike you can still get to a lot of places you will have to be.
Yeah.
Where was the drive-in? Like how far away was the drive-in?
Gee, that's a good question. There are several drive-ins. We had 3 at least. So, you'd have to take a car for that, though.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously.
Well, yeah,
you'd want
to drive it. Like,
Right.
I mean, although there were like, did you ever like what about like sports fields, like ball fields and stuff like that? Like, was there anything like that? Like, is there any sort of like image of being at like a fence post and because you can't pay to get into the ball game, just looking through the knothole to see what's going on? No, nothing like that. That's all right. So that's a little too.
Right.
That's a little too.
I know, but you had stuff. You had the fairgrounds, which are here. Now the
Okay.
fairgrounds are gone. They had a racetrack on a real racetrack. I remember.
You mean like a betting track? Like a no, like an
racing track.
A car racing track?
It's a 1.5 mile loop. Yep. They had it here in Trenton. It was Trenton Speedway. Yeah, they closed.
Oh,
it doesn't exist anymore. They filled it in. It's all all apartments and stuff like that. So we had that. We had a pool, a local pool that we walked to.
Mm-hmm. Is that now the YMCA or is it a different pool?
This is. It's hard to explain where it is. It's in the same area where the fairgrounds were, which are no longer there, and the pool is privately owned. It was not a community pool.
How much to get into the pool?
$2. Not even,
$2? Oh, that's a bit high for the 50s, isn't it?
It wasn't a lot. A lot.
Yeah.
And then, so we spent a lot of time at the pool.
Especially in the summer, so try to like describe to me summer in the let's assume that we're talking about like say 1959, 1960, because I want to get that window of where it seems like you probably would have been you're old enough to ride a bike, you have your established circle of friends. You have it seems like you have the most freedom and the least responsibility to just go wherever you want it. Like, I'm asking, before you get into middle school and suddenly the pressures of life start to come down on you, especially as you get into high school, like, describe summer in the late 50s. Like, what is it that like?
Well, it depends on who you're with. So,
okay, describe that. Let's break it down.
So we had ponds, so we go fishing. So,
yeah.
And I never had a fishing, but people had other fishing gear, so we go fishing. So we fish here, but you spend the day. I mean, you'd be gone all day. You get up at 8 o'clock.
Just be by the stream with a pole in the water, just sitting there, doing nothing, talking.
Coming back, and we go down to trestles, which are where the electric power lines are. We keep going for as far as we want. No one would bother you.
Getting poison ivy and ticks all over
the place. Then,
I imagine those places were still just as wilding.
And then we had the clay pits.
The clay pits?
Yeah, you see this stuff you don't understand. There was a place where they used to take the clay out and process the clay. And I wasn't clear what was the clay used for. Probably for porcelain and things like that. We had a porcelain facility and other things. And so the clay pits were hollowed out 50 feet, 25 feet deep pits that would be swimming holes.
Mm-hmm. So
you go swimming in those, freshwater swimming in those. In the wintertime, they would freeze over solid, and you go skating on them. And there's a lot of stuff here, but now it's all paved over, so you really can't make it out. So there's a lot to do.
Yeah, you weren't precisely bored.
No.
What did you spend a lot of time in front of the TV, like, or was that more of like?
Well, don't forget, we only had 3 stations.
You only had 3 stations,
and even now, you really don't. I mean, you don't have much to see anyway. So,
like, what do you remember being like your sort of favorite programming? Who did you?
Well,
besides the late night stuff,
Beaver.
Leave It to Beaver was
right.
one. Okay.
Then you had all the westerns that would be periodicals that would be. The Rifleman,
Lancer, maybe? No, that was a bit late.
Oh, that's later.
No. Yeah,
and that's then you're not even interested in TV at that point.
Yeah, okay. So
you're getting older.
Yeah,
so
let's
now
stick
you're
to
really out a lot.
All right, let's stick to the 50s. Like, so TV. Did they used to broadcast like cartoons? Any like?
Oh,
like,
sure.
Do you remember like what were your like favorite cartoons?
Well, they had Looney Tunes and all that other stuff. I can't remember the actual programs. because we didn't have Disney yet, Disney Channel per se, right? So
Right.
you had
All of these would be like
network
they would be syndicated.
network TV.
What
Yeah,
these studios would do is that they would
right.
sell
Hanna
bulk,
Barbara,
yeah, they
whatever.
would sell
Right.
bulk packages to the major TV networks, and then they would syndicate these throughout the
Correct.
country. And of course, when did the local channels come about? Were they already there when you were sort
Yes.
of coming
So
of consciousness?
Philadelphia,
Philadelphia.
WPI, and then I forget what the one was in New York. That was always a harder one because we didn't. There's no electronics, so no computer or hookups or
Right.
cable.
So the reception was pretty bad.
So you had to rely on an antenna, right? A TV antenna, and you'd be up there trying to turn it so that you get the right reception.
You mean Dad would be up there trying to turn
Or
it,
my
or
brother
Uncle
would be up there.
Uncle Nick? I can just
And then
imagine.
we'd have
So like Uncle Nick is up there on the.
No, my brother. He'd be up there, and then you take tinfoil and you put tinfoil on the ends, hoping that it would improve. You know, you want to watch.
It would improve the
If you want to
reception.
watch King Kong or something, it's all
Come
snow.
on, it comes on in 7 minutes.
You have all the snow, and you'd be turning it manually. So, that's pretty much. It's you have to make do with what you have, right? So
Yeah. Who were your friends back then? Let's describe the. Who were these delinquents you were
they're
running around
delinquents, a
with?
bunch of delinquents. It's really amazing that I'm not dead. I don't know. So, well, there's some people like Kenny Simon was one, but he's a little older, so he's more towards my brother's age. So, but
Kenny Simon, what was he like?
he's a pretty hard character. He's like
All right, Joe Biden.
he's like
he
corn
was,
pop.
he was a real bad dude.
He was.
Did he run with a bunch of bad
He
boys?
did.
He have a knife?
He looked like James Dean. So he had the slick back hair,
I bet he thought he was so cool.
yellow jacket. It had leather jacket.
So he was like the older boy. He was like.
So whenever I see Rebel Without a Cause, I think of Kenny Simon.
Nice. Okay, so that at least that.
And I
part
don't
is
know
like-
whatever happened to him. I don't know. I mean, because we lost But anyway, his grandfather was his father. Maybe his father was the farmer who had this whole area.
Okay,
so it was Simon's farm, and Kenny Simon.
Was he sort of like a?
He played guitar. That I do remember.
Oh my God.
Because my brother and he would get together, and they were trying to and then there's another guy. These are all really. It's hard to explain. But we had a drummer also, who's another
reprobate.
Another reprobate. Absolutely.
So were they all farmer
It's amazing
sons?
they're not
Were the
crazy.
farmer sons the craziest of all? Were they just like, or like, was it just?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because don't forget, they're all farms, right? So they're all farmers' people. Yes.
Mhm.
Right. So you go down the line. So
They were. Those were the ones that were the
mine-
hardest. They.
mine were pretty good, but we were more city. We're a little more. We were less.
Well, you were more savvy. Like
Right.
it was like
Right.
it's
So
like
we just made explosives. That was our. They were overt, but we were
Okay.
less. We made explosives.
Okay, now you said that very nonchalantly,
Yes.
and I'm sure a lot of our listeners who did
Well, they
not.
know what I'm talking about. Anybody?
I
my
know they
age
know
knows.
they know what explosives are, but I'm sure that many of them would be very because this is not part of the Norman Rockwell painting. Everything that we've been describing up until this point has been like the perfect American cheesecake cover of a magazine where it's freaking we're playing baseball at the dirt field, we're playing football
We
in the
did
streets,
too.
we're going to the pond, we're going fishing. Hey, let's go fishing. We're riding around on our bikes. And now you just suddenly say, and then we'd like
Let's blow up something.
Yeah,
Right?
exactly.
So one time we took I don't know if you know what they're called M80s. They're
Yeah.
they're
They're
cylinder.
they're like eighth sticks of dynamite,
Yes.
basically.
They're an eighth stick of dynamite. We used to open those up, and we took a aspirin bottle. And they were glass at the time.
So they would just sell you an M80? Where'd you get the M80s from?
Well, contraband. We get it from parents that went down south and got it. I mean, it's not.
Oh my God.
It's not a big deal. Fireworks were always illegal, but it didn't matter. You go south, and then you bring them home, right? So, anyway, so we had these M80s, and we emptied like 6 into a aspirin bottle, drilled a hole in the cap. Obviously, we drilled the hole first before we put the ads. And then we put it...
Because one of you was smart enough to think we shouldn't put it in first and then drill
drill,
the hole
because
because we might
be
this
dead.
might blow up
Might
in
blow
our
up.
fucking faces.
Right.
How long did it take? Was it something that someone said immediately, or was
No,
it?
we were
okay,
pretty
you had it
savvy
planned
that
out.
way, yeah.
Okay, you had it
Yeah,
planned out.
because, it's... Anyway...
Was there anyone in the group that was like the more technically minded? Like, was there like a sort of like a a Donatello of your group, the guy who was more into like the engineering and was actually like saying, all right, this is how you make a
No,
bomb.
I think more of it's who has the materials.
Right. So it's
Not so much the who's knows how.
so whoever has the materials is the
Right.
one who's making the rules. So you're kind of your safety is depending upon
So-
yeah.
Anyway, so what we did is we took that and we took a fuse from an M80 and we put it in and said, wait a minute, it's not going to give us enough time to get away because we have 6 M80s packed into a small aspirin bottle. So we have to figure a way of giving us enough time to get the hell out of where we're doing. So we figured we'll take, I don't know if you ever remember this, we used to have what we call punks. They're sparklers. They're a mixture of sawdust and probably some inflammable.
Are they like the sort of things that you would
Sparklers? You
they're
light
sort of
them?
like they're like things you wave around
Yes.
like at nighttime, like on the 4th of July.
Exactly.
It's just like a sort of.
You don't see them around anymore.
They are not
because
meant to be used as fuses.
They're not, but what you can do is
Well,
we
they are,
lit
I
it.
guess. They're fuses without explosives.
We lit
attached
it.
to
They
them.
don't right.
Yeah.
We lit it, and we put the down at the bottom, so we knew we had a ton of time to run away.
To get behind whatever rock or tree.
Well, no, we hightailed. We put it somewhere.
Okay, so you didn't even stay to watch the
No,
explosion.
no.
You just see. This is the thing that's messed up.
And we
Is
just,
that
we're,
like if you
we're
were
about three,
if you
we're 3 or 4 blocks away.
because this is the thing. This is like the maniacal nature of children. It's that like anybody
well,
would.
we had enough
any-
sense to get out of the way.
Wait, no, it's not about the sense to get out of the way, because here's what happened. It's not even just you have this puerile head of, we just want to see something blowed up real good. You don't even want to see it. You just want to know that something blew up and that you were responsible.
We do it.
That is the most, like, that's
Right.
like a miniature terrorist at work. Like, this is psychopathic behavior. Like, you want to, like, you're going to come back and find out what the aftermath of it was and just know, ah, man, it went off exactly as we planned it. Could have.
No one was around.
Someone's
So-
chewing one of those candy cigarettes and saying, "I love it when a plan comes together." So
And
the
then
thing,
this one, well, the sound was this like someone took a stick of dynamite and blew it up in the middle. And all I saw, we're just there on our bikes, we're just riding along, and all the neighbors are coming. What was that? You know, all these things. The cops are coming to figure out was it an explosion or no.
the cops came out,
Oh, yeah.
but nobody caught you because
No, we're just watching like any other kid. We're out there waiting, looking around.
You're a psychopath. You were running around with a group. You were a juvenile delinquent.
We're juvenile delinquents, but not really in the bad sense. Just
Dad, you set off a bomb in a public space.
But it was a open area, like a park area, like so no one.
But what if an
around.
animal got hurt?
No, it was. There's no one around. So
Okay.
The other one was where we made a pipe bomb. That gets a little hairier there. The made a pipe bomb that
All right, so now we're this is okay. Yeah, go.
you probably heard this one, and that was not done with it was done with matchstick heads. And we packed the matchstick head. We took like 30 packs of matches, took the heads off, and packed them into a pipe. And then took a a dart is right when you play darts.
Yeah.
Okay, we took a dart and we machined it so that it fit in the top of the pipe. And we lit that fuse. Unfortunately,
You lit the dart?
we lit the fuse into the pipe.
Oh, you
So-
lit the fuse into the
like
pipe. The pipe is attached to the dart.
Right.
So, okay, so the match heads are all inside the pipe.
Yes.
You have the fuse going into the part of this pipe you smoke out of. You have the dart.
Not pipe, a lead pipe.
Oh,
right?
right. Why was I thinking of a pipe?
Right.
I'm thinking of like a tobacco
No,
pipe.
no,
I
no.
realized,
No.
it's a pipe bomb.
Pipe.
So you have all these hundreds of matchstick heads packed in. There's a dart on the other end. So this isn't even necessarily a pipe bomb. You made a bazooka.
Yes. Made a bazooka and it went off. And this was stupid because you don't know if the pipe would have exploded, right? And you had gotten shrapnel, right?
You could have gotten killed.
Sure.
Again.
And it went off. Of course, you always take cover.
And it would have
right?
been a fitting punishment for you if you were blinded.
Well, it went, but it took off. It was gone. So we were wondering.
This is a Goofus and Gallant story, but there's no Gallant.
No.
Every single child in this story is Goofus.
There's no Gallant. There's no Gallant. There are degrees of Goofuses, but there are no Gallants. And then and it took us, I think, a week before we were just riding on our bikes and we looked at one of the houses. It had to be 3 or 4 blocks away from where we set this thing off, and we noticed that we saw the dart sticking in the upper attic window. I don't know if the people ever knew that their upper window was crashed with the dart. The dart was sticking, and how it. So
What
there are
if
a
it
lot of
had
things
gone
like
through
that.
the window and hurt somebody, Rocco? Did you feel no remorse?
Well, now you do, but now So
As a kid, you were just like,
yeah,
"Eh,
yeah,
didn't make-"
unintended
As
consequences.
a kid, you're just thinking, wow, that went really far. It traveled almost 3
Right.
blocks. You're even saying that now. You don't feel remorse now. I don't believe it. You're just as psychotic about it
No, you
now as
wouldn't
you
do it
were
now
then.
because you realize
I'm not saying you
someone
would
could.
do it now. I'm saying you don't feel remorse
It was
about it
different. It
now.
was a different time.
We had just gotten out of a war. We were very belligerent people. That okay. There's another. Probably some more. No, there's a few more explosive stories, and I don't want to do the one where you are on your bikes. I want to save that for last because I think we can use that to be your like. We'll use this as your Bildungsroman, or your Blowings your this coming of age story of a young arsonist where where we'll save that for last as the part where it seems like this is the part where you really realize, all right, I gotta like put this shit away and grow up and move
Right.
on with it, because eventually I'm getting, not because you were remorseful, but like eventually I'm gonna get caught.
Right.
But tell me about who was the friend who, it's sort of like, so when we talked about the first bomb that you were talking about, the one where it's like not the dart you packed into the pipe, but the early
That was
dart.
with
Because there's another story of a dart.
Joe Tomchik and I. Joe Tomchik and I went to school.
Tomchik
together.
was a Pollock, I believe.
He's a Polak that lived in the city, more towards that way. So
more to the urban center of
right,
Trenton.
more of the urban center. So I would drive my bike to his house and said, "Let's do something." He says, "Okay, let's make a bike.
Okay, but
Let's make a bomb."
Yeah, but I'm thinking of the one where, like, because the way you described it to me before was that you go to his house, he's the only one home, or is his mom home?
They're all home. But it's like
But
like peanuts. No one pays attention to you.
They just let you say, "Hey, is Tom
We're going
home?"
out. I'll
Yeah,
see you
no.
later.
This isn't the one where you went out. I'm talking about the one where he's in his basement fashioning this thing, and you go to his house. You go in, like, and I don't remember if you told me any of his parents were home, but you go into his basement. You like, he calls that, you're like, "Tom, are you in?" Because apparently, if his parents aren't there, the door is unlocked, and you just let yourself in.
Yeah.
And you're like,
No,
calling.
you knock on the door.
Well, yeah, it's like, and you call, "Tom, where are you at?" And he says, "I'm in the base."
Joe Tomchik, right?
Joe Tom. Oh, this is a different kid. Joe
Tomchik is the guy.
Joe Tomchik. Sorry,
who did the bomb
yeah.
with the
So
aspirin.
Joe, he's in the basement, and you go down into
Well,
the
he had
basement.
M80s.
What is he doing in the basement?
Just fooling around. Like he had like a wreck.
He's
like,
not just fooling around. He is a terrorist making an explosive. What is he do? But
No,
I want you to describe the specific action.
No, I can't remember the surroundings of what led to it. The idea is that he had the M80s.
But he had a dart, right? Because I remember before you described it as it was another dart bomb. But what he was doing.
Oh, that was Tommy. That was Tommy Hutchinson.
Okay, so this is what I'm saying. All right, Tommy
Hutchinson said, "Let me take a." He wanted to make a dart that would explode upon impact.
So not like the dart that just goes out of the bazooka and lodges itself. He wanted something that could be used tactically and explode.
It was a tactical effort.
I don't know.
And he did. What he did is he took well, when you have a gun, you don't use a bullet. A blank. There are blank charges.
Right.
For a blank gun that fires blanks.
Right.
There's no real bullet. Anyway, the charge, then he set the charge, he took the point off the dart, he set the charge in the handle of the dart, and he put it into a vise, and what he was trying to do is tap the head of the dart onto, of course, it hit the head of the dart, obviously at some point it hit the cap exploded.
Because it must have sparked, right? Like
because remember, that hits on impact, so when there's no spark,
it's just incredibly volatile, like even like a...
No, it's more of a shock. So
right.
So that what it is that when you fire a gun, the pin hits a compressed like TNT.
Right.
right? TNT, you could throw matches at it, it won't go off, but if you hit it, then it'll explode.
Yeah, it'll fuck you
It's
up.
like that. So that's what it was like. They're like that, and it went off, and fortunately, no one got hurt, but it did explode.
It did blow up in his face. He
It
was
did.
holding
Luckily, he was holding. Had glasses on. He had specks of metal in the. He put on glasses. He was smart enough to do that.
He didn't wear glasses. He had protective goggles on,
No,
they were
he just
just
took a pair of
glasses.
sunglasses or something, just to put them on, just to say, oh, let me protect my eyes at least.
This is like one of those stories of like someone gets a piece of shrapnel lands in their chest, but a Bible catches it, but instead it's this pair of glasses.
Luckily, yeah.
So it blew up in his face.
Hurt.
He could have blinded himself. What did you do after he nearly killed himself?
Usually after things like that, when you know you just escaped death, usually you just put things aside and say, we got to do something different. That this is not, no sense in doing this again, because we realize it's not going to
Fooled
work.
me once.
Right.
Yeah, it's like,
so we learned that,
we learned when it backfired on you.
Right.
But when it was other people, no lessons learned. We got to up the ante. All right, but so Joe Tomchik was a different explosive.
That was the one with the medicine bottle.
Oh, that was
stuff with the M80s.
So we already did cover that. All right, so let's get into the final story. This is one where not only do you guys have an explosive, but you have now completely moved on from. We've started with making the basic explosive, the basic rudiments of getting something to blow up so that it makes a really loud noise and scares the bejesus out of people. You have then moved on to tactical use, which is the development of a projectile that has the capacity to not just blow up, but to hurt people from a very long way away, which gives you even more sense that you're not in as much personal danger, and that there will be even less chance that you get caught if you use it. But now we have moved on completely to now, how do we maximize the potential to use an explosive while we're moving? Because what if we really... Because now it's not enough to just know that things are going off. Now you really want to be around when the thing...
Well, yeah, but it is... Well, the idea is to make noise. It wasn't...
It's sort of like...
It wasn't intentional.
It's
All
sort
these
of
are
like
unintended consequences.
It's sort of like a psychopath. How like they start on one level of like, first it starts with like the minor crime, but then it's not enough because the high that you got, it won't be the same if you do the same thing again. So you need to keep upping the ante of getting closer and closer.
Well, no, I think it's just a different thing. It's not an ante. It's not.
So was this another pipe bomb? This was a for real pipe bomb. It wasn't an explosive. It was like an actual like pipe bomb.
No, that was nothing. This was what we did is we took an M80 and we needed something projectile so we can get it away from us.
Right. Because you were planning to ride your bikes.
Right, just toss it.
Where were you gonna throw
it? Field.
In a field.
Yeah, it was not... We always were safe not to make sure people would get hurt. So...
But where was this field?
The field was still in the middle of the town that normally people would play ball on. And it was overgrown with grass and hay. But
you had your spy go there first, establish there are no civilians in the town square, sir. And you say, excellent. Begin the operation.
So we lit it.
You're riding your bikes.
Riding the bike, and then he just whizzed it like a
frisbee. Who's he? Is it
Tomchik?
Tomchik, Joe Tomchik.
Right.
He's responsible.
And it does what it has to do. It explodes. The M80 explodes. Little do we know that when the M80 explodes in a bunch of dry grass, it catches on fire.
So this field just starts going up.
The field goes up.
And you guys tear ass out.
We are 3 miles away by the time the fire company comes to put out the fire. No one would have been hurt. It would have burned out. But the idea is you don't want to... Right.
You don't want to be starting fires.
Right.
Particularly...
It would have caught anything.
You don't want to
be... There's a fencing around, right? It isn't like you're...
Okay. So it was more
The other one was where we were in a... This was completely unintentional, is that we were in the clay pits over here.
Mm-hmm.
Where the woods are, where you're looking. Now, imagine those woods continue. There's no 295 yet coming around.
There's no highway around
here.
Highway. Yeah.
Right? So it was all woods. And we were at the clay pits, and we routinely would start fires, not for burning, but just to start fires as a kid.
Because you were bored. You just...
Like Boy Scouts.
Right. Okay. Yeah. You're like...
And for some reason, there's a gust of wind came up, and it caught fire.
Oh, no.
And then...
You started a forest fire.
Started a forest fire.
Oh.
And
Who's that freaking bear? He'd be very upset with you right now.
And it came all the way up to the street.
Smokey is just.
So going down Cruiser Road.
Smokey is just standing by, turns and sheds a single tear.
Where the what do you call it? Where the environmental facility is. That was all woods. That all caught on fire. So
how big was this fire?
It was huge.
What do you mean it was huge? How big?
It was huge. It was like a three alarm trucks. They had to put it out because, as you know, there are homes that abut the forest, right? Right here, right? The homes you go down here, they're all right against the woods. Fortunately, there's enough lawn area, but you never
know what's going to catch wind.
Catches over, right? Yeah. Comes onto the roof or something like that. So, and
that must have been a pretty messed up experience.
Yeah, because we don't run. You sort of like
Well, you did run before. This time though, you stuck around to see the outcome.
Well, we're worried because now we're saying
because this was accidental. You were just lighting a fire and it got out of hand.
Tommy Hutchinson says, "You can't say anything, man. This is serious."
He swore you to secrecy. This is arson, man. We could go. How old were you at this point?
Oh, I wasn't in. I think I was in grammar school yet. Yeah, it was.
So you weren't old, but
seventh grade.
You could have been treated as a juvenile delinquent to that. You could have spent some time.
I don't know how much time you would spend. You do some kind of, but yeah. Anyway, luckily, when the wind blew, it blew just a segment. Mm-hmm. If it went completely the opposite way, it would have been a disaster because that would have been all the woods would. By the time the fire company would come in to put it out, and so you learn by it. But so it's not.
But that was the. Do you think that was sort of the
At some point, it starts not becoming fun. Then you just realize. But that wasn't.
I was trying to get to.
That was not intentional.
Yeah.
That was.
Yeah.
Right.
You started to realize that it's like this is kid stuff.
This kid stuff can be dangerous. So
we need a nuke.
Trying to think if I did anything else. No, beyond that, I think we were pretty. Then after that, you get into high school. Then it's pretty.
Did you ever play with guns? Did anyone have a gun?
Yes, we all had guns.
You all had guns?
I didn't have any, but
yeah. So everyone could. What you mean is everyone could find a gun when you wanted one.
Yes. So everybody's a farming area, so
right.
Tommy Hutchinson had a shotgun. He had a hunting license. Everybody had hunting licenses. Mm-hmm. Trainer had a hunting license, bow and arrow license. They hunted.
Right.
I didn't hunt. I was from the city.
Yeah,
I moved here.
You're a guinea from New York City. I don't know nothing about this
but
stuff. Come on.
Fire.
You country boys. You think
shotgun?
Everybody knows
you
about
say
these
you fire
guns,
a shotgun,
man.
You fire. I mean, so yeah, we had guns, but we were at
sort of fire them at cans and stuff. Yeah.
No, they weren't actually hunting. You wear the patch on your back so that if you have a game warden, they would know you're hunting. It was legal. Everything was legal.
And so other hunters wouldn't shoot you by accident.
There weren't that many, luckily. You're right. I mean, that is a problem when you get into some areas. But no, it was a different. And by the way, there was a stream back here. These apartments weren't here, so there's a full stream back here where the rats and muskrats, and we had people trapped. So Tommy Hutchinson trapped, I think even, and then Trainer. Ron Trainer, because you get money for the pelts. So we used to trap.
This is like Huckleberry Finn shit.
It is. You'd be surprised, and they would. You have the boards where you invert the hide after you catch the muskrat, and you scrape off the blubber. What do they call it, blubber?
The microfascia.
Yeah, and you go to school here, and they bring in this stuff, show the class like a show and tell how you go about. Skinning.
Yeah, show and tell was a lot more interesting back in your day. I guarantee that show and tell was a lot more interesting when you actually went to school with farmers and hunters and pelters. People actually had shit to show, not just this is my favorite toy. It is a Game Boy Color, and everyone else has a Game Boy Color with them. Ugh. In many ways, it was more dangerous, but in many ways, it is. But and I guess that's the thing.
But I think what's interesting about that perspective is that some of these teen movies I get more enjoyment out of, because
which teen
crazy
movies?
Shit.
It was
crazy shit.
It was almost
it's more vicarious, right?
So it's almost like the opposite problem, where it's not so much that the movies are overplaying wild youth. It's just that the way it's represented
Right.
is almost sanitized.
Right.
in
For
a
you,
way.
it's anachronistic.
Right.
Or not.
Yeah, I have
That's
no
wrong,
idea.
That's
yeah.
the wrong way to say it. It's not anachronistic, but it's foreign.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah.
It's interesting, but it's
But
foreign.
I also
but
know
for me, it's no.
but
Me,
as
it's
far
not.
as like broad research, I know enough to know that
Yes.
like the beach party movies are definitely a myth. But as far as like the Rebel Without a Cause, the Rock Around the Clock stuff, the delinquent stuff, that part apparently is not too far. The Stand By Me stuff is apparently not too
Stand by
far.
Me, it hits pretty close to the reality of the situation. Of course, there aren't any deaths involved, right?
Right. You never
Right.
found a body.
Right, never found it. Well, let me think about that. Let me think. Did we ever find? No, we never found a body. We found carcasses
Why
of
would
animals.
you? Okay, you'd have found but
Yeah.
not of like
No,
of
no,
people.
no.
No, you were
Never
spared
found a
that.
body. No.
Let's make our way to. Oh, did you have any jobs when you were a kid?
Yes.
What did you do?
Aside from making bombs and things like that, where you didn't get
That
paid
wasn't a job.
Right.
That was a.
Right. That was more of a.
That was more of a career.
It's
Your
more of
career in evil, as Blue Oyster
avocation,
Cult
right?
would
It's
say.
avocation.
Yeah.
No, I worked at Hatalas. There's to be a down here where the dragonfly is.
Yeah,
The next
people who are
farmhouse
listening,
down?
Dragonfly is like a
Horticulture.
horticulture.
But the next house
accessory
down
thing.
was Hatala's house, and
Mhm.
that I used to, for a couple bucks an hour. My job was to make these flats and then plant seeds, and then have the sprouts come up, and then they would take the plants and plant them. But my job was actually just doing flats. Just,
Oh, like filling
putting-
them with soil
Exactly.
and making the
Putting
holes.
the
Oh
deep-
my god,
putting-
I've done that.
well, you know what I'm talking about,
I
right?
do know what you're
Right.
talking about, except I did them when I was in my 20s when I was working
No,
at
you're
the
right.
Honeybrook.
Well, that's the same technique. So you just and they put them in a hothouse and they grow, and then
Right.
you take them and transplant them. So that
and
was
you'd
a
make
good
us
job.
some extra cash that
That was a
way.
good job.
Some spending
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah, so you can buy more explosives. Yeah, kill it.
but what other jobs? It was mostly odd jobs, I guess. Like
Well,
you
that
were
was
just
pretty steady.
Yeah.
During the summer, that was pretty steady. Don't forget, you had to go to school, so it was hard
Right.
to really find a job where nightfall wouldn't be upon you.
Did you ever have a paper round or
No,
no?
no. My brother was starting one, but then it's hard. It's hard work.
Yeah,
paper.
that'll kill you.
You have to get up like. Don't forget, it isn't like today where you can't find a fucking paper at 8 o'clock in the morning. They had a paper. You had to be up at 5 and make sure the paper was on someone's freaking step before they got up.
And God forbid it wasn't, because everybody knew each other and everybody knew whose kid was on the paper round.
My good friend Art Michon made a living off that. He did like 110 papers. He did like a whole. So he got up at 5 a.m. before he got to school. He delivered. Now we're getting into high school, and he delivered papers. And there were 2 papers, a morning and evening, and he'd do an evening paper. So
before and after school,
Yeah.
he was working.
And he made a ton of money doing that. Yeah, you make a lot of money. Even back then, it was really a lucrative. But today, you look outside, you do clock, where the fuck is the paper? I mean, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely insanity. We had to make sure that paper was on someone's step, because they tell you, there used to be a.
They would threaten you with violence
There used
more
to be
often
a
back
cartoon,
then.
not a cartoon. It was a actual thing. What you're not supposed to do as a kid that sets off a chain reaction, and a kid leaves out his skateboard. It wasn't skateboard, maybe his skates.
Right.
And the father slips on the skate. I don't know if you can find this anymore. Maybe it's on. I don't know the name of it.
Right.
And then the father has a bad day because he just tripped and fell. And
well,
then,
yeah, he broke his back. He
and then
pulled
he-
his back.
and
Threw
then
his back out.
It leads to a series of things, and they'll think, "Oh no, see, son, see, boys, that's why."
And because you left your skates
Right.
out, that's what started the nuclear
or
war
it was
between
something. No, but that.
the sound of thunder. A
Anyway,
butterfly
so-
flaps its wings.
So
and
the
it
thing they
hurts, yeah.
told you is that people expect to see the paper when they get up in the morning, and it sets off the whole freaking day if they don't have their paper at 7 a.m. because they go to work not knowing what happened.
What the fuck happened today?
Yeah. So, now it's like,
Now people don't want to read the news anymore because
Now we don't have-
it drives them crazy.
now our guy's pretty. He's not that bad, but he's pretty good. I mean, sorry, but I'm just.
But things are good. Okay, so now we're in high school. We're in your teen years. You've moved on from your previous life as a terrorist and a miscreant.
Not quite, but that's it. We're getting.
You still occasionally like, okay, I'll make a few. I'll light a few M80s on the side. That's not a. It's
Right.
not a crime.
Right.
It is a crime, but it's not. It's not. It's
the
not
other
a
way.
serious crime.
No.
I'm not murdering anybody intentionally. But okay, so you're in high school.
Nothing. It's unremarkable. High school
It wasn't very. It's kind of boring.
is boring. It's straight.
Yeah.
So it's straight like your high school. You join sports. You're in. You go to school.
What sports did you do?
I was track and field.
Yeah, that works for you. You were always a very. Were you always a very skinny guy?
Yes.
Yeah, you were. Yeah.
So, track and field.
Yeah. But what were the subjects you started getting interested in? Like, what was the...
Science was always a...
Yeah.
Science was always a good...
Mm.
That's it. So you stick with that, and then...
So this would be around the 60s? Like,
Well, I graduated from high school in 65. So now we're doing from 65 to 69.
The year the Village of the Giants came out.
Fortunately, I didn't see that one.
Yeah. But
it was like Navy versus the Night Monsters, and there are all kinds of driving things that start getting into color.
Yeah, and so who was driving back then? Could you drive?
No, my brother.
Yeah, your brother would drive, and you'd all go out. Yeah. What was your romantic life like? Girls? Or did they like you?
No. Sorry.
No, I'm not asking for anything in particular. No. I'm just like, but, did
romantic life was zero.
No,
so,
yeah. Yeah, that wasn't that. You were
you
were a nerd.
My prom was no, I wasn't. Just no one liked me. Right. So I just wasn't.
Maybe it's because you were a psychopath that people would just say.
No,
he just seems to have a shallow effect to him. He keeps telling stories about the times he made weapons when he was a child.
That would get me more than less. No, I was just the opposite.
That's who the girls were into.
Right.
The kids who were still doing the violent shit.
Right, the guys that had BB guns would shoot BB guns at you. Like when you're running.
They would shoot BB guns at you?
Yeah, I remember I would be running down here, and I would be running because I'd be for
track and field. You'd be practicing.
And all of a sudden, I'd jump off the air because someone hit me in the butt. And I look, and there'd be a hole in my pants, and then I would find a BB.
They would lodge in your skin. They could break skin.
So it turned out that one of my high school, he wasn't a friend of mine, but he's
one of your colleagues, as it were.
Yeah, another day I was walking, and he's in the school parking lot, and he hits my book bag, or with the BB gun.
So you had a bully.
But he was okay.
He was nice to you personally, but he thought it was all a joke.
He was a psychopath. I mean, the point is, I'm trying to say, it probably became a mayor, who knows. But the point I'm trying to say is that, no, he said, he even come, sorry, Rocco, it was me that fired that BB gun. I said, well, what the hell are you doing, firing BB guns at people? You hit someone in the head or eye? He said, no, I know how to shoot really well. Well, anyway, he lived down the corner, so when I came running by...
No, I can aim, don't worry about it.
He would just hit me with a beat. I didn't realize.
Because implicitly he's trying to make you feel better, but implicitly he's like, oh, don't worry. If I wanted to hit something vital, I could.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, and he probably could. So
another one of these farmers' sons, these punk farmers' sons.
Hit the window of the high school, and he shattered the high school window with it. And
did he get suspended or expelled for that?
No, probably.
Yeah, or just detention. You could
No, we had the sister. It was her name, Sister John Joseph, and she was it was corporal punishment.
Oh boy.
So you got smacked to shit like you wouldn't believe. Yeah, and we all loved her because we used to getting other people in trouble just to see them get their shit smacked out of them. It became like a sort of like a, I never got hit. I never got hit.
You were a good little boy, or you just never got caught.
I never got hit. So I was always.
Did you ever
Oh, one time I got punched out for no apparent reason.
Not by a teacher. A nun didn't come up and cock you in the jaw.
Omerta is more important than. And she asked me, "Who punched you out?" And I said, "I'm not going to tell you."
Well, who did punch you out? No one's going to know now. They're probably all dead.
He's dead. Actually, did die.
What did he punch you out over?
He's trying to impress.
Or did he punch it out of your head?
I was a freshman at the time.
He was a senior.
Just being an asshole. Yeah, and he took he knocked the books out of my hand. He took the books and he hit me in the face with the books. I went into we had lockers,
Right.
just like they have at Notre Dame.
Right.
And he busted my lip, and I just got up. I didn't.
He was just being an asshole. He just
for
like
his
did it
girlfriend.
for
Yeah.
in front. Oh my
To
god.
impress his girlfriend.
Oh my
Yeah.
god. Did it work? Was she impressed?
I have no idea because
You were unconscious at the time.
So I got up and I went to the bathroom. And I had a huge lip and.
Did you go to the nurse?
Yeah. The problem with stuff like that, it isn't what it does because of them. It's what you have to explain to people.
Right.
So now
because you don't want to tell someone that someone just humiliated me in front.
You don't want to go home.
Yeah.
Come home to grandma and tell her what happened because you kind of swollen lip.
Was Grandpa still living at this time?
No.
Oh.
Wait. Yes, he was. Yeah, because it was 72 he died.
Oh, so. He's passed in 72.
Right.
All right, so he was still around for a while, and I guess
but the fathers are usually absent. Right?
Yeah, at this time
working.
they were like,
they're always working. So
he came home. He just wanted his pipe
and
his beer.
so the nun, John Joseph, sat me down. She says, "I'm okay." It says it's just a swollen lip. It'll be fine. It just can I go back to class? And she says, "I want to know who did this. I'm not going to tell you who did it."
I'm not a rat. No squealing.
And it wasn't because I was afraid. It's just because you don't rat out.
That was just the code.
Because I said he's only trying to impress his girlfriend. It wasn't. I even explained that to her. He said he's trying to impress his girlfriend. I mean, it's a stupid thing, but it wasn't something like he's out to get me or anything. It was just I said I'm not going to rat him out. I didn't say it that way. I said I'm not going to tell you. So
you're not getting shit out of me, sister.
You can give me detention. You can expel me. I'm not going to tell you. He said, "Get out of here." She said, "Let's go." Yeah.
Well, she was thinking, I'm not going to expel you for not telling
She was
the
mean.
truth.
She's not mean. She was hard, but she was a fair.
Yeah.
She had a good head. I mean, she was a good principal. So you just like to hit people.
What about did you ever experiment with smoking cigarettes or drinking before you were of age?
Sure.
Yeah. What were the circumstances like? Were you like
share a cigarette, like going fishing and things like that?
Yeah.
Because they smoked.
In high school, did you keep it up, or
no? It's just,
that sort of trailed off. That was more of the
what
kids.
Happens?
Yeah.
You just get so busy, and then you know how it is when you have a sport. There's not much you could do between studying and sports and whatever you're doing.
Because a lot of those things are just measures of time, aren't they? And once
they
your
are.
time is occupied, it's just like, where am I going to find time to
smoke?
smoke?
Exactly. Right.
Did people used to like
a smoking, just like they had in Notre Dame, I'm sure. You have a smoking pole or a smoking area.
Right.
Right, I'm sure you could go out and have a cigarette if you smoked.
But it was more for like, well, actually, when was it that like there was an age restriction against smoking? Like, because anyone could basically go buy cigarettes, right? Yeah. It wasn't,
No, it was restricted, but you still got cigarettes. It didn't matter.
Yeah,
just like booze
or M80s. They didn't care. It's just like boys will be boys. Give them what they want.
Booze.
Yeah.
Someone will look the age to go and buy booze and bring it out for everybody. No.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Okay. So you're in high school. Any weed? Any weed is going around? Like
no,
but was
nothing
it in the,
I know of.
But was it in the air? Like did you?
No.
Yeah. So like
wasn't the era yet.
Yeah.
That didn't come to college. Then and even that was not the stuff you have today. It was pretty weak. So.
Well, yeah, it was seeds and stems mostly. Yeah.
So.
I remember when we were watching that movie Smoke and the Flesh. And I was just watching this, and I could not believe it because there's this scene in Smoke and the Flesh where they literally unroll an entire roll of paper towels just so that they could have the cardboard tube. They put a hole in the tube, and then they put the joint into that, and then they smoke it. It's called a shotgun. And I remember thinking, I have to ask Dad if this is real, because this seems like some bullshit that like some exploitation producer made up.
So now I'm in college, and yes, during sophomore year of college, yes.
And that's how
they call it shotgun. Yeah,
they call it shotgun.
And then of course you had the bongs with the water and all that. Then that came out. That gets more sophisticated, right? Then you put booze in the bottom to give it a flavor, like like you use wild turkey or something that has like a sweet or a wooden barrel flavor.
To sort of take away the pungency.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it cooled the smoke, and then you take the smoke. There are all different things that we had, and then you take the bong water, and dry that down. It's like having hashish paste. I mean, then you take that, and like the tar, right?
Right.
You smoke that. There's shit in there. God knows what it is at this point because it's been oxidized. I don't know.
Yeah, but that's more of your college days.
Yeah.
I guess the only other thing I wanted to like ask about the 50s and the 60s because, I mean, I guess the political ferment, like, was there ever a point where, like, I guess you've said this before on the podcast, is that like political consciousness wasn't really something that permeate, like, besides like big pieces in the news, like whether it's Sputnik or the assassination of John F. Kennedy, like it didn't seem like this, this pastoral American scene you've painted. It doesn't seem like it really got penetrated by.
No, it didn't. You're right. It did not.
But then again, like, how segregated was the society you were in? Like, did you ever see like black folks?
No.
Or yeah.
In fact, during '68, when I went to Germany, is when we had the riots here in Trenton.
You went to Germany in the '68?
Yeah, because Catholic school would have these trips.
Okay. Well,
right?
I had trips in Catholic school. They never took us to
No,
Germany.
you could. If you want to fly to Germany.
It was like
It was Germany, Austria, and Switzerland in 10 days.
What the hell?
It was during Easter break.
The most we went to was frickin' Baltimore. You went to Germany?
No, yeah, we had Lufthansa Airlines, and then we all went as a class. That was that's another story. I'm not going to get into.
Oh my God, you guys were so much luckier.
And luckily, I met my brother. He was stationed in Germany because he got drafted.
Yeah, because he got drafted.
Unfortunately, he got into Germany and didn't have to go to Vietnam.
Yeah, it was more just a diplomatic base,
Right.
Like he was.
Yeah.
But there was always the possibility he could be on call.
Right, but he's more into electronics and microwave.
So he was more of like an engineer, more of a.
Yeah, he had the techniques, the technical skills for that. So I met him there in Frankfurt. So we did that, but that was a wild trip too. Germany was a wild time.
I guess we could discuss Germany some other time, like the episode of the Garcia brothers in Germany.
It has the same flavor. It has the same flavor of, again, the fact that people, because there are less distractions of computers and TV and a million different things that you have today.
The mass media is much more limited. Yeah,
everything required a cooperative effort. So you went to a drive-in, you went to a movie theater, which means people, right?
Right. But someone had to have a car. All right. Who
has
a car?
Parents, you have no other people in order to get you know what I mean? You had to rely on people to get by, and that's somewhat lost now. You don't have that kind of. Now you go to high school and things like that. So it's more or less, I don't know. It's pretty much the same in high school, but.
Yeah, there's definitely more of the atomization and alienation.
Yeah. But I think a lot of it's what do you call it? It's inevitable and unintentional.
But like, as far as like, because not a lot of the social and political stuff isn't really going to penetrate because like, I mean, that's sort of the purpose of the suburb, isn't it? Like the entire ideal of the suburb, and basically the reason why it deleteriously leads to exactly what we're talking about, which is just the precipitous alienation and the drive towards a more cynical politics where we literally take away all of the things that made this prosperity possible in the first place.
I don't know. It seems like students are more engaged in politics more than ever, right?
Well, we're more exposed to a lot of shit, and that's sort of what I'm talking about. Is like the mass, again, like you said, the mass media for that entire period was 3 channels on a fuzzy TV. Right. Maybe you read a newspaper, but you weren't reading newspapers back then, were you?
Like Walter Cronkite, I wasn't reading newspapers. Yeah, that showed when we got to U.S. history. Yeah, because that was our requirement, so we had to read a paper.
But you also, you just like didn't know anything. Like again, you didn't know any black kids. You were like,
that was in Trenton Central High. So
yeah, and so they were there, but it was a deep segregation.
It was pretty deep, and then people on rooftops. I mean, there was a
riot in '68. Yeah. Was that in response to?
Yes, it was Tony Tasillo. Another reprobate who because of the geographic location, went to Trenton Central High and started a riot because he's Italian
Tony.
bigot
Oh
racist.
God damn it! Did you know him personally, or was he just like
Sure.
some guy? You know Tony Tisillo? Did you? Okay, so Tony Tisillo.
Oh, you should be saying this because that's
Oh, I'll bleep it out in the
Okay.
podcast. Sorry. So this is alleged
It's another
stuff.
Tony.
Okay, so I personally thought that you. Wait, so Tony, is this a guy who wasn't? It didn't get pinned on him, but you know
No,
personally
it
that
started
he.
off as a fist fight between a black and him.
But was it ever reported in the paper? The
Absolutely.
name. So okay, so it was all reported. So I don't. It's a matter of record. I don't need
Yeah.
to like censor this.
And
This is a
then
matter of record. This is not alleged. It's
not a legend. It's not. And he started.
He started it. He
spilled-
went there for the specific
it
purpose
spilled
of
out.
fucking with a
It
black
spilled
kid.
out of Trenton Central High into the entire city.
Was that common? Was that pretty common for like especially
first time.
Italian kids to
No.
just go to the Trenton
No.
just to fuck with the black
No,
kids?
he was because of geographic location. You had to go
Oh, he had to go.
because it's public school.
All right. So but he was a bigot, but it could have been just like a fight. It could have just been like, oh.
But it started the race shit started because.
But it became a full blown riot because now you've got other Italians close by who are finding out they beat up Tony. We're gonna get our shit.
Right. Then it just spilled out into the community, and then finally it became like.
And then the police come in and start cracking down.
Italian section of the burg now abuts the African American.
Right. And so their businesses start getting fucked with.
Then the guns come out.
And then the guns come out.
No,
Jesus.
unfortunately, no one really. There was some fires. There were some cars that were destroyed and things. It never really got out of hand, but it was made enough to make the national papers that it was.
I'm sure the police did a little bit of cracking.
In fact, we got
down.
messages. Someone got like someone mailed one of our students in Germany, or was it Austria? Well, wherever we were on a tour. He was reading out. Yes, the people that there were windows smashed in the
businesses on
businesses,
fire.
things like that, and but Trenton Central High, prior to that, was a bastion of famous people. Like back again, it's just the demographics, how it changes, right? And then that's.
Well, but also just the social infrastructure, like what little there was in a segregated society, just gets
you've
siphoned
seen Trenton
out.
Central High, right?
I've seen it. Now they refurbished it, but like I don't.
Even before it was a cathedral. I mean, it's this gorgeous building.
It's like
old.
it's been renovated, like and it's a long time fucking coming. But like I guess the point that I'm making is that like obviously this was already a segregated society, like it's like, and obviously there was already this intense bigotry and this segregation, but at the very least there still was a qualitative difference in terms of there actually being a robust social economy with a lot more social service than you have nowadays. But like in the 70s and 80s that just gets siphoned out, and so you get this metastasization of things just getting worse and worse. But I do remember, like, was it in high school? Wait, Malcolm X was assassinated in 60. MLK was 68. Malcolm was assassinated in 63, 64.
Yeah, it was earlier.
Yeah. And I remember you did once. What was your awareness of the not just Malcolm X in particular, but like of the civil rights movement? Did you really like pay attention? Did it like permeate?
The only way, no, I just because you live in your own bubble,
right?
But
65 was.
I knew something was wrong. I mean, because.
When did you think like it first sort of developed that percolated in your mind that like this is fucked up, that like
very early.
This is.
I'm telling you, it was early that I realized that this is not right. That even though you grow into an Italian community where there was going to be a lot of
anti-black hatred,
a lot of bigots.
Yeah.
Something was different. My brother and I, for some reason, I can't explain why, are the black sheep. No pun intended.
Mm.
We just had it since the inception. This is not right. Something's wrong here. I can't figure it out what it was. But
do you think part of it is just like the weird, like part of maybe your Christian upbringing, like that part of you just noticed the inherent contradiction between?
I don't know where I learned that race is not important. That race is just different species, and then you have different classes of within one species. That race is
It's a construct of a.
and
Yeah.
it's just a construct, and that even it's just
I do remember you told me one story, and yeah, it was 65 that Malcolm got assassinated. You told me like what, like again, like what did you think of, like, to the extent, again, to the limited extent that this is even permeating your life, because you are busy at this time. So you would have been 65. You would have been a senior in high
no
school, or
65 have been a freshman.
freshman in high school. Okay, so you're already in high
Yeah,
school.
and people badmouth Malcolm X. They wouldn't even say it right. Malcolm X says this. Malcolm X says that.
And I'm
So,
sure they threw in some
right,
some
expletives.
yeah, there, here and there.
I did work at a gas station for a while.
Oy.
Pumped gas. So that was a gas station down here on right where the convenience center is. Before you get to the high school on the right, used to be a gas station.
Mm-hmm.
It was Sunoco.
Okay.
And I pumped gas early in high school, too, along with doing the. So I had a couple odd jobs like that. But there you pick up, I don't know. I can't explain where I don't know. I don't know. And my brother's same way. Just something's wrong here. Something doesn't make sense.
Do you think maybe it's just a function of the fact that you are this younger generation that, like, I mean, I guess I guess I can't universalize it, because it's like it doesn't really, because it's not like the Civil Rights Acts pass and then suddenly all this shit goes away. Like we covered, like, these things have a way of metastasizing and getting worse through socioeconomic forces, regardless of whether there's necessarily a change in sort of the cultural attitudes of whether certain beliefs are acceptable. And maybe we're biting off a little more than we can chew at this point.
Whether it's anti-Semitism, whether it's race, whatever it is. In my fabric, when I was very young, I realized something wasn't right. Something's wrong here. Something is not right, and I wouldn't participate. I just said, just keep your mouth shut. You don't raise against. You just don't participate.
Keep your head down. Yeah,
don't worry about
stir
it.
it up.
And maybe part of it was sports. Maybe sports, the fact that you had to compete against African Americans.
So, you might go to compete against Trenton Central High.
Get our asses kicked in races, right? So obviously,
Oh boy,
I don't want to get into that.
That's a whole other can of worms. But do you think that because you didn't know any black kids, and you didn't know any of these kids personally, but you go to these schools, and like you were saying, Trenton Central High was, obviously it was not as good as a lot of the schools it was definitely not as good as the private schools. It wasn't as good as a lot of the white public schools, but it was still a perfectly fine.
No, it was better. For example, they had more courses. They had anatomy and physiology. We didn't have that.
And than in your private school. Right. I guess I should have thought Catholic high school is sort of a private school is a whole other.
We were thinking about having reciprocity where we could take off from our high school and go take A&P at Trenton Central High.
You thought about it, but
no, I went there and we interviewed, and the people were very nice. The African, but that's still
but that could have been
that was still way after I realized something is wrong. I mean, I was much younger when I realized something is wrong. So I don't know. It's just anyway.
So I mean, I guess we can wind it down there. That is the. So I guess this is, again, I'm not going to universalize it, and again, on a later episode, I will try to actually break down into Village of the Giants and The Food of the Gods, because I think there is still more to talk about as terms of the book and then this film being endemic of a way of looking at youth and youth culture as it evolves over the 20th century and emerges. But I thought this was a good way of more to generalize it, and that this is what wild youth was actually like. It was going for fishing, going down to playing football in the streets, and and making pipe, but it was also making pipe bombs and race riots and all this other stuff. It's like, and BB guns and kids knocking you into the locker. The wild youth part was real. It's just absolutely not this cartoon rock musical nonsense. Absolutely not. I do think, we haven't talked about the movie, but I do know I've learned the two classic lessons. Well, I haven't learned the classic lesson. You definitely did not learn the lesson that crime does not pay.
No.
You are a career criminal, and you need to be stopped before
Well,
you.
I would call it a learning curve that's very steep. So maybe that's the better way of talking about it.
But yeah, so I can't say crime does not pay here, but the true monster is man.
Right.
As far as the well, you were definitely also a monster, but as far as like the broader firmament in which you live, and that basically destroyed exactly what made this period prosperous in the later generations, which but and I guess the only other thing I've learned is that I guess movies are great, but like I would encourage our listeners to take this as an example that like sometimes we do need to be less alienated and atomized. Sometimes it's good to just like get stories from people,
Right.
It's like you can't trust movies. Like, I know it's absurd for me to even say, oh, Village of the Giants, do you realize it's not socially accurate? I understand that's absurd on its face, but there's a more general point that like you can watch movies from the 50s and the 60s, whether they're these exploitation films or the social issue movies, but it's an entirely different thing. You need to really, you need to hear the stories of the people who
Right.
lived it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
Right.
Anyway,
That's
have a
good.
good evening. Yeah, have a good evening, everybody.